Good morning for some and good afternoon for others. I am happy to introduce this presentation on behalf of our Bloomfield team. Systems Thinking, Creating a Culturally Responsive Professional Learning Community. I am Dr. James Thompson, Jr., the proud superintendent of Bloomfield Public Schools in Bloomfield, Connecticut. We are located about halfway between Boston, Massachusetts, and New York City, New York. Recently, I read a statement from Dr. Rochelle Walensky, Director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, highlighting the disproportionate impact of COVID-19. She went on to say that these social determinants of health have lifelong negative effects on the mental and physical health of individuals in communities of color. That is why I am so passionate about this work in my district. We must do better for the children in our care. We know racism is a serious public health threat that directly affects the well-being of our students. Let me begin by sharing our vision. The key words are high-performing district, positive climate, academic achievement, and community and family engagement. This slide shows our 4 priorities. These are the fundamental principles which guide our district work. All of our instructional efforts center on these underlining priorities. Number 1, holistic accountability. Analyzing data to inform decisions. Develop high leverage strategies and monitor progress. Number 2, rigorous curriculum instruction and assessment. Implementing standards-based curriculum and rigorous assessment programs across all content areas. Priority 3, positive school climate. Creating a safe and orderly and healthy environment that promotes enthusiasm for learning and respect for others. Priority 4, family and community engagement. Having successful collaboration with families and our community partners that contribute to student achievement. This slide describes Bloomfield demographics. We are a suburban town that borders the city of Hartford, the state capital. Hartford is also known as the insurance capital of the world. Bloomfield has a population of just over 20,000 people, composed of 57.5% African American, 35.7% white, and 6.8% other races. Bloomfield has 7 public schools serving pre-K through grade 12, which includes 2 magnet schools. A quick snapshot shows that we have a student population of 2,059. You can see the race breakdown. Bloomfield is one of the most segregated districts in the state of Connecticut. We also have 18% of our students diagnosed with a disability. 16 different languages spoken in the district, and 59% of our students receive free/reduced meals. I will now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Ms. Stacey McCann.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. We recognize that many of you in today's audience are familiar with these educational cases, and we wanted to highlight Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, our U.S. Supreme Court's ruling which upheld racial segregation under the separate but equal doctrine. We provide additional examples as Mendez versus Westminster and Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, in which these justices ruled unanimously that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Brown versus Board of Education was one of the greatest Supreme Court decisions of the 20th century. In each case, be it national, local, or state, each attempted to end segregation for students of color in society and in the classroom. And the fight for desegregation continues today on another level. So Connecticut recently joins other states in establishing a movement to desegregate the curriculum for all students. State Representatives Bobby Gibson and Douglas McCrory introduced Public Act 1912, a bill now required of all public high schools in Connecticut to offer a course in African American and Latino studies. The seeds of this act were germinated under the leadership of our very own superintendent, Dr. James Thompson Jr., our board chairman, Donald Harris, and local historian, Dr. Benjamin Foster. In our presentation today, we will share with you Bloomfield Public Schools' systems approach to implementing culturally responsive teaching. 3 years ago, on the eve of the commensurate of 1619, the 400th year anniversary of the African American experience in America, our school district hosted a press conference featuring a panel discussion with key educators whose expertise ranged from pre-K to post-12 collegial experience. Prominent local historians engaged in conversations that gave credence to the seeds that were previously germinated, which introduced Public Law 115-102, which has now evolved into Public Act 1912, an act concerning the inclusion of Black and Latino studies in the public school curriculum. One of the 4 district priorities, which was shared earlier by our superintendent, is community engagement. Recognizing that it takes a village to raise a child, we value the voices of our students, families, staff, and local for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Our Board of Education has partnered with the Greater Hartford Interfaith Alliance Action, CIRC, and the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving to leverage the district's focus on race, diversity, and equity. And one of our district's mantra is that our students don't get smarter unless our teachers get smarter. So under the district's priority number 2, rigorous curriculum instruction and assessment, building the professional learning community of our non-certified and certified staff is a key lever to increase overall student achievement. Here's an example of our professional development at a glance, which highlights over 24 workshops that have afforded our staff over the past 3 years. We have also enlisted a myriad of experts to deliver this content of high quality professional development. And as we kicked off this current 2021 school year, despite a pandemic, we purchased a copy of this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Hindi, for all district personnel, and we engaged in One Book, One Bloomfield, which is a district-wide book talk, as we have sought to address anti-racism on all levels. When we talk about all levels, we're saying people, policies, practices, and pedagogy. In our lifetime, I'm sure that each of us has heard someone say, "I'm not a racist." So here in Bloomfield Public Schools, we wanted to enable our community of stakeholders to support anti-racist policies, actions, and ideas, with the ultimate goal of creating anti-racist students. We have also partnered with our town's local library, Prosser, to leverage a town-wide approach. And another exciting initiative this current school year here in Bloomfield is the celebration of the centennial anniversary of the Harlem Renaissance. Each month, beginning with December 2020, district and school-based leaders have collaborated to offer monthly activities and events featuring themes from the Harlem Renaissance era, themes such as the Black heritage and American culture, education, women's movement, jazz age, film, politics, just to name a few. We are proud to have solicited interest and participation from families, students, Board of Ed members, local community members, and organizations. And these events have included videography, family games, panel discussions, student performances, etc.
Thank you very much, Stacey. We can go to the next slide. Our district has provided every staff member with a handbook entitled Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. In the book, the author provides a brain-based approach to culturally responsive teaching. This approach teaches practitioners through everyday awareness and knowledge, building learning partnerships, and building intellective capacity. The ultimate goal is to build independent students. We've also adapted the Ready for Rigor framework as a framework for culturally responsive teaching. As you can see, the framework is built on the pillars of awareness, learning partnerships, information processing, and community of learners and learning environment. Providing affirmation, wise feedback, validation, and instructional conversation are all strategies that we use to create independent students who are ready for rigor.
In order for our goal to be systematic, it's important for us as a district and a school, even as a classroom, to know what we're looking for. An easy guide to observing whether or not our classrooms, our schools, and our districts are culturally responsive. There are critical pieces. These give us an opportunity to actually witness the work that is being done. And when we walk in a classroom or in a school, what do we see? What do we hear? What are the conversations that are taking place? Is there evidence that teachers are using that culturally responsive teaching strategies? Are they teaching problem-solving skills? Are they providing effective and relevant feedback that promotes students' strategic and extended thinking? What evidence exists of authentic student talk? What is the level of engagement? And what are students doing and saying? Knowing our students and how they learn, it plays a vital role, as we know, in teaching and learning. Planning and instruction must be intentional. And as Mr. White mentioned before, Zaretta Hammond's book we used as part of professional development, a school-wide professional development during one of the district's professional development days. In order to model an effective teaching strategy, the leadership team at Bloomfield High School used the jigsaw method, which falls under Hattie's effect size of a 1.20. And collectively, as a school, we read Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. But what we did is we vetted the chapters as a leadership team and methodically assigned them out to our content departments in the school. And then teachers worked in their departments, read each assigned chapter and discussed the contents and create 4 to 6 PowerPoint slides. It was a book club. It was like a book talk that we had as a complete staff at Bloomfield High School. We talked about key details, key points, 2 to 3 words, phrases that really shared understanding, but most importantly, develop a culturally responsive instructional next step in which we absolutely must engage. At the end of the time, each department came together and shared their learning. And when we were finished, we had a PowerPoint presentation of a synopsis of every single chapter of the book that was shared with everybody in our school. It was very powerful. This slide just represents one of the chapters. This was taken from our science department, which ironically had to study the parts of the brain. So it was pretty relevant for them. But they did identify the parts of the brain. But the key points, just so you know what we were looking at, was the key points that really stood out and shed light as to why some of our students struggle. Just according to Zaretta Hammond's book is, if students don't feel supported, they're vulnerable and they feel threatened. The brain has 2 prime directives, and that's feeling safe and happy, and positive relationships keep our kids' system in check so they can learn. That new information is coupled with existing knowledge that needs to be learned. And then again, learning is an active process, and it requires focused attention, active engagement, and conscious processing by the learner. And then finally, most importantly, is the child's brain keeps growing and expanding its ability for complex thinking.
We are continuously striving to adopt a culture where all students can learn by leading a culture of change. So here's our next level of work as a school district as we think about our systems thinking approach. We are in the process of revisiting our theory of action. Teacher leaders and district leaders have collaborated to develop our portrait of a graduate. We have continuous ongoing job embedded professional development for both certified and non-certified staff. We have cadres of teachers who are working on curriculum revision to ensure that the curriculum reflects our student population. And our district plan of excellence, as outlined by our superintendent this morning, really speaks to our 4 priorities, and that is continuously ongoing work.
So you all will have access to this presentation, and you'll notice that on this slide, there's a hyperlink at the top attached to the title resources, and this is going to lead you to a Google Drive. The Google Drive will contain Bloomfield's district plan of excellence, the district professional development at a glance, the portrait of a graduate presentation, the culturally responsive teaching in the brain presentation that we mentioned earlier during the presentation, as well as a document containing John Hattie's high effect size strategies. So thank you so much.
Thank you, folks from Bloomfield. That's an incredible initiative that you have got underway there. We've got a few minutes for questions, and I guess I'd like to just throw this out to you. How does this work compare to the transformative work that you've done in raising test scores and student achievement during the span of your of the last few years?
I will begin by saying that this work is a continuation of the transformation. I believe as educators, we have to review research and trends constantly and adjust and respond to what is going on in the world and how that affects our students. For instance, over the past 11 months, we have endured a pandemic that closed schools and turned our lives into something we have never experienced. I had to be very flexible and balance the needs of our students, families, and staff. This included new classroom designs, student success and well-being, training teachers become more proficient with technology, and at the same time, teaching and learning had to continue. I remain committed to identify any implicit biases based on race, gender, and other identifiers. Also, I stress the importance of classroom culture and the relationship between emotion and cognition. Finally, I trust my staff when they want to pursue new knowledge. I support them. I'm proud of the brain-based work that my high school team has brought forward. We have shared this work across the district, and we know that building metacognition could be one of the most impactful learning strategies. I started this reply by saying that this is a continuation of the work. Just wanted to let you know that I am first and foremost a teacher, and therefore a love of learning and sharing has positioned my district to continually move forward.